It is time to open up the mailbag, specifically on the topic of baseball's, well, pending gambling scandal.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. And you can follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever they call it these days, and on Instagram. And I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. The best way to get a hold of us is right here on the YouTube page. And leave that hashtag everyday Sully. Let's get on to it, because today we're going to be talking about the Clase and Ortiz gambling scandal that is, well, kind of that first little string that's being pulled out in a big gambling problem that Major League Baseball could be staring at. We're also going to be talking a little bit about some of the questions and some of the comments that you all left on the YouTube page, and also wonder if this crazy push to put the A's in Las Vegas, to put a Major League team in Las Vegas, has anything to do with gambling lust. So let's talk about it a little bit. Now, we talked about the Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz situation of what was going on when they were basically have been indicted for their role in basically prop bets that were going on. And yes, I made a mistake. I said they were both relievers. I know Ortiz is a starting pitcher, so forgive me on that. But the prop bets that exist and they're omnipresent in all of sports right now are creating a little bit of an issue. Now, the case of a team like the 1919 White Sox throwing a World Series, or as I brought up in the book, To Everything a Season, which brought up the question of, was the 1914 World Series played on the level when the Boston Braves, a really, really huge underdog Boston Braves team, swept the mighty Philadelphia A's, and Connie Mack was furious and basically broke up the team immediately. There are questions about the 1912. There's suspicions about 1918. And of course, the Pete Rose situation where he was gambling on games as the manager. And that's a big, big no-no. And if you need to have that explained to you, I don't know why we're sitting here. And of course, the first year Pete Rose is not the manager of the Reds. The first full season, he's not the manager of the Reds. They go wire to wire and win the World Series. So I don't think we're seeing the potential of a scandal at that level, but we could see the micro scandals, the microaggressions that can lead to not knowing what is taking place on the field is on the level. A baseball game is a series of events. You take one series event goes left instead of right, it can change the entire trajectory of the game. That's one of the reasons why I've been screaming for instant replay, and why I love that instant replay is now part of the game. Give me those robot umps as well. Give me a uniform strike zone and instant replay, so we can have the way a game unfolds be based in reality, be based upon what is actually happening on the field. But if you throw in another factor, which is, do the players on the field have an ulterior motive, pitch to pitch, play to play? Well, then that throws another wrench into the situation that baseball has to address. Clase and Ortiz throwing a pitch here or there and picking up a few $1,000s here or there may not be the equivalent of throwing the 1919 World Series, but it also changes the trajectory of the game. Didn't we just see in the brilliant Game 7 of this most recent World Series, and also the 18-inning game, also the Game 6 thriller, also the extra inning do-or-die game between Detroit and Seattle, the brilliant Game 7 Toronto victory against the Seattle Mariners. All these games that were decided that were so razor thin that a bounce here or there, a call here or there, is the difference between the Blue Jays winning the World Series or not. And maybe that little thing that sets the thing on a trajectory is something that happens in the third or fourth inning. Either way, and if it's a bullpen closer who is tipping the scales of reality and may have an ulterior motive, then they're doing that normally in a situation where the game is on the line and it's late in the game. We have to have a situation where we know the players are trying to win and we know the calls are being made. And if you add gambling to this mix, it's going to be a nasty recipe. Now, I talked about this a few days ago when this broke, and I got a whole bunch of different responses. This is the first one I'm going to read. It's from Chris Burnett 9905, because this comment has been stuck in my teeth like a raspberry seed since I first read it. And I'm just going to read what it is. I condensed a couple of the words just so I can squeeze it in here, but it's basically this. The account of the specifics from Locked On Guardians is a lot more informative. He's meaning based upon my show. What a surprise. A podcast devoted to the Guardians was more detailed than my show. And the folks, the Justin and although at Locked On Guardians, they do a great job. They reported no pitches in 2024 are part of the indictment. They were all from 2023 and 2025. Cool. But I can still be suspicious of 2024. Here's the deal. Are you saying, Chris, that he was being dirty with his pitches in 2023, dirty with his pitches in 2023 and 2025, but not that year in the middle? Not he bookended it. In the middle, he was going to Sunday school. He was shoveling the driveway for his neighbors and did everything on the up and up. But the year before and after, is that really what we're supposed to be looking at here? This is why you can't have this cloud of, is this on the level, hanging over baseball. Here's the deal. When someone cheats and succeeds, chances are they don't stop doing it. If it worked, you keep doing it. And he wasn't caught until this year. So the pitches in the indictment involve investigation around 2023 and 2025. There is a year in between that. And that's the year he was pitching at a superhuman level until he became a disaster in the postseason. I can look at that with my head cocked like the RCA dog. Just like I can look at the Jose Altuve buzzer situation and not completely dismiss it. We know they were cheating in 2017. Why wouldn't they be cheating in 2019? Why is a buzzer on Altuve more absurd than a trash can being banged? Yes, I know I don't have proof of it, but this is not a court of law. And that sort of weird rumor floating around Jose Altuve clouds that home run he hit off of Aroldis Chapman. That's the rumor that enough people look at going, I know it sounds crazy, but it's not going away. It's essentially the Richard Gere gerbil of baseball. The weird rumor that I don't have proof of it, but it's not going away. The Richard Gere gerbil. I did not expect that to come up here today. But if you're saying that I think he was doing something wrong in 2023 and 2025, I have every right in the world to look at that year right in between. Just because I don't have proof, this is not a court of law. You can detect patterns. If I had a bakery and I set out free samples, and the person working the front cash register next to the free samples gains 35 pounds in 2 weeks, and the samples are always empty. I may not be able to see the dude shoving the donuts and the bear claws in their mouth, but I can have a pretty healthy suspicion that something's going on there. If we know that 2023 and 2025 are years where we should be a little suspicious, then do you know what? I'm not out of line for saying, what about that year in between? And that's the problem of getting into bed with all the gambling. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in a stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between the lines, the login screens, and prices jumping out at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans, and Game Time is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by that Game Time guarantee. Plus, you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price. All fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I use Game Time to get my tickets for the National League Championship Series over at Dodger Stadium. And let me tell you something, it was terrific. Now, for the NFL, it's great. Get your Game Time, a couple of taps, you get great deals. Some of the NFL games could be as low as $100. That's what I spent on nachos at Dodger Stadium. The app, it's super simple. You can see your exact view from the seat before you buy them. I did that with the playoff tickets, show me exactly where I was in Dodger Stadium. Whatever NFL game you're going, you can do it right there too. Zone deals are great because I know where I like to sit in the stadium. So you pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Look, it's faster, it's cheaper, it's less stressful than any other way I've ever bought tickets. Now, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Download Game Time today. Hey, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen of the day. And thanks for making us the #1 sports podcasting network. I'm so happy about that and thrilled that we're growing. We're growing. Well, that was the Chris Burnett 9905. There's a couple other ones I want to think. This by the way, um, this is one from Ehibib. I'm sure that means something. The pitch by pitch is too small of a market to be betting huge money on. That's probably true. That's probably true. But do you know what? It may also be what I call the $20 out of your account. A lot of times you saw people when they were really starting to learn how to scam people's ATM cards, they weren't pulling out giant chunks. They were pulling out like $20 at a time, knowing that even if you look at your available balance, you may forget that you pulled a 20 out here or there. Maybe that's part of the point. It can fly under the radar. Who the hell is investigating Luis Ortiz? If you can make a little bit of money here or there, I don't know everyone's financial situation. They could be owing money left and right. I don't know, and neither do you. Or maybe they need to pay for something and they can't pay it out of their bank account for reasons that I don't want to get into. I don't know, but it could be a way to just get enough money to take care of whatever you're trying to take care of. And it fly under the radar because it's not the big, huge epee money. And that's one of the things that makes it insidious. Now, you had Clase, who's probably going to have tens of millions of dollars flushed down the toilet. But if you have people who are more on the periphery and aren't the big, huge money makers, well, some of that small time money might be enough. Might be enough to make things, to make things work. Now, some of the main reasons why baseball has to address this right away, David Dunn 3179 addresses it. Integrity in sports is gone. Everything is tied to gambling now. I hate that I have to watch my favorite team on a gambling network. I get it. I totally understand it. And yeah, I know I have to. Several of our sponsors are gambling sites. So just full disclosure, I acknowledge that. And it's becoming a big part of the game that is impossible to avoid. When we've gone from ABC Sports and NBC Sports to now gambling sites having their own broadcasting network, you can understand how some people might think that it may cloud or sully, if you will, the way some people view the sport. And baseball cannot afford that. And there's something else here. And Travis Hancock 2302 brought up something that I was thinking about for a while. They're all corrupt. By the way, I hate it when people, they're all corrupt. I don't believe they're all corrupt. If he means the leagues in general, I think the leagues, the most part, want to make money. I don't think the players are all corrupt. I think most of them are just trying to play ball. The refs are 1000% helping make calls from New York City to determine the game's need. Well, first of all, they're called umpires in baseball. But that brings up another point. But if we don't have the robot umps, we don't have a unified strike zone. What's to prevent the umpires from cashing in? What's to prevent the umpires from betting that first pitch is going to be a strike, that first pitch is going to be a ball? And suddenly you start seeing an umpire becoming Leslie Nielsen in The Naked Gun and calling everything a strike. We've seen umpires with horrific strike zones. Hell, when we talk about how a call here or there can change the trajectory of a game, take a look at the Game 4 of the National League Championship Series. It was Game 4? No, it was Game 5. Sorry, the Game 5 of the National League Championship Series in 1997, when the legend of Livan Hernandez was born, because Eric Gregg had a strike zone that went from one edge of the home plate to the right field foul pole. If he threw in the same, if Livan Hernandez threw a ball within, I don't know, the county, he was going to call it a strike. And it got to the point where the Braves were having a wail at everything. I think at one point I thought he was trying to throw an intentional walk, and he was calling it a strike at that point. And that turned the tide of that National League Championship Series. And I think Eric Gregg, the late Eric Gregg, who I met once, could not be more of a delightful person. I just think that he had a big, wide strike zone in his mind. But we've seen enough calls from umps over the year going, what is up with this guy's strike zone? And now we have to ask that question. And even if it is just an ump up there with a lousy judgment, you have to throw in that question. And that's part of the big problem. That's a huge part. And we cannot have the mindset that Ariel Gricho 1994 has. And I'm not saying this, Ariel, just so you know, I'm going to pull a Sebastian the Crab. Ariel, listen to me, okay? I'm not saying you're wrong for saying this. I'm saying baseball has to avoid this. All sports are fixed. Maybe not every individual game, but for sure all leagues have players on the inside who are compromised. That's right. Someone in Major League Baseball is the equivalent of the Leonardo DiCaprio character in The Departed, or the Matt Damon character in The Departed. There's someone in there. There's someone compromised. There's a person on the inside who has an ulterior motive and not doing what they seem to be doing. And that stinks. That stinks that prevailing thought is starting to emerge in sports. And we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about a situation in baseball right now that makes a lot more sense when you consider the lusting for gambling and everything that entails. But guess what, folks? It's my favorite time of the podcast to talk about FanDuel. Ha! The NBA is back, and there's no better time to mix your NBA with FanDuel, the official betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game and you want to ride a hot hand, or maybe make those individual parlays on individual plays, FanDuel has live bets from all sorts of things that you can bet on, from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Who knows how much fun you can have on those bets? And you can combine your bets to make a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Parlay is French for speak. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So head on over to fanduel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. Don't think for a minute the irony is lost on me. I hosted Locked On A's as kind of I was kind of a long-term substitute teacher there. I've been a long-term sub before I got my full-time job. It's an interesting place. It's not really your classroom, but you do your best with it. That's how I did Locked On A's. And the whole time it was absolutely flabbergasted to me the urgency to pull the A's out of Oakland to the point where they'll pull them and plop them in a minor league stadium for years, literally years, playing in a minor league facility in one of the worst. I mean, look at Sacramento's a beautiful city. I love going to Sacramento River Cats game. You can't play day games there in the summer. You're an ant underneath the magnifying glass. And you're going to play Major League Baseball there? The first year this was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster in terms of attendance. It was an absolute disaster in terms of the optics. And it was really embarrassing because the A's had some talent on their team. And if they didn't have such an intense home field disadvantage, they may have, they would have a shot at 500. I have no compunction saying that. And they're going to be there this year. And you're already seeing, even though they have the first and second on the Rookie of the Year vote, they're kicking the tires and saying, well, we'll get rid of J.J. Bleday and business will be as usual. And all of this because Major League Baseball is salivating, lusting after Las Vegas. Compared to Major League Baseball, Nicolas Cage in leaving Las Vegas was pretty chill. Was pretty calm and collective. They are falling over themselves. Now, I will give a little bit of credit. There certainly seems to be construction going on. I check out the ballpark cam, and for a long time I said, I don't even believe they're going to build the darn thing. But they have, it's not a doubt, the worst owner in sports in John Fisher. And yes, he had to clash with Oakland city officials and mayors. But what he did in his decades or and a half or however long he's owned the A's to absolutely sabotage the team and drive them into the ground. They should have relieved him of his duties as owners. Instead, they are giving him enormous sweetheart deals so they can climb to Las Vegas. And that's the part that always drove me crazy the most. Nashville is a tremendous market. Should have a team. You can make it, in fact, they should have, if you're not going to have two teams in the Bay Area, and you can make an argument that there probably shouldn't have been two teams in the Bay Area. And this is someone who has spent many years in the Bay Area, and I loved having two teams there. But there was never a year that one of the team wasn't trying to move in their entire history there. Even in '89, when they both won the pennant, the Giants were dying to get out of Candlestick. And if that didn't work, they were going to scram. You can certainly make the argument that you could put another team in the Pacific Northwest, either in Portland or in Vancouver. I personally would prefer it to be in Portland because I love Portland, but Vancouver is beautiful as well. There's places like Salt Lake City, which is a bigger media market and would have obviously have shown that they'd be able to support sports as they've done with the Jazz. They'd be a natural rival with the Colorado Rockies. You could make a case for Austin, Texas. You can make a case for Charlotte. You can make a case for New Orleans. You can make a case for Montreal. Much more than you can make a case for Las Vegas, a city that would be the 40th largest media market. There are 30 teams, so there are many media markets that won't have a baseball team. There'll be a bigger media market than Las Vegas. It is a population that is predominantly transplanted people, which we've seen with Miami, we've seen with Tampa, we've seen with Arizona, that it's harder to get the attention of a transplanted fan base because transplanted fans tend to be loyal to the cities where they came from. I'm still a Red Sox fan. I haven't lived in New England since Bill Clinton was president. And I haven't lived in Massachusetts since Reagan was president. It's been a while. And also, they're saying, oh, we're going to rely on tourism. When does baseball play? In the summertime. When do people tend not to go to the desert for vacation? The summertime. And baseball is a regional sport. They're not the first team in the booth like the Vegas Golden Knights, who were great out of the gate. And they're not a national sport with national interest like the NFL, like the Raiders. They're a local sport. They have to get local attention and local people, not tourists who are going to be wandering around the desert in the heat. But what does Las Vegas have? All the gambling. They even had the award show, and I gave baseball credit for doing the award show. They got to put the MVP, the Cy Young, and the Rookie of the Year in that show, but they had the right idea. The host, Roy Wood Jr., is a fabulous host. There was some clunky parts of it, but they're getting the kinks out there. But it was in Vegas. They're just absolutely doing everything they can and falling over themselves and ruining a once proud franchise and ignoring other potential markets. If they did all this with the A's and they wound up in Nashville, I would still say lousy things to John Fisher, but I would say, well, they've got Nashville now, or they've got Portland now, or they've got Vancouver now, or Montreal, whatever other market. But because they're falling over themselves to get to Vegas and everything that Vegas stands for, again, it all gives it a bad look. And I understand there's gold in them Dar Hills. I understand that baseball took a gigantic punch to the mouth during COVID. They had an entire season of revenue basically wiped out. And we have seen in the past that when baseball faces an existential crisis, they tend to latch onto the thing that gets them a lot of money. When there was the gambling crisis after the 1919 World Series, they saw that people would come back if they saw home runs. So they changed all the rules to favor hitters. They wound the ball tighter. They made sure they couldn't play a dirty ball anymore. And suddenly, a great pitchers era ended, and we went on with Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig in the great era of hitters of the 1920s into the 30s. When baseball featured a crisis of conscience, the last time I lived in New England, which was 1994, when the World Series was wiped out by the strike, they came back and they looked the other way during the steroid era because the steroid era captivated baseball and saved the game. You may not like how they saved the game. You may treat them like Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven, who does immoral things to protect the town, but that's how the game was saved. I really got to update some of my movie references. And now here we are, post-COVID, an entire season wiped out. And suddenly you see there's a lot of money in getting in with gambling. I'm not saying gambling is evil. I know gambling is always going to be there. I do. But you can't have it be so intertwined with the game that you start to question what you're watching. People were questioning what they were watching when they started seeing players showing up like sumo wrestlers, suddenly hitting 55 home runs and an opposite field, to the opposite field. Between 1977 and 1990, in the years in between those two seasons, 0 players hit 50 home runs. 0. And the top of the all-time home run lists seem to be written in stone. Aaron, Ruth, Mays, Frank Robbins. I mean, the names that were up there were not going to move. And then suddenly the floodgates opened and the turnstiles spun. And now more money is coming in this way. And it's tough to go against money. Do you know why? Baseball is a money-making enterprise. But you got to be careful because you can't put yourself in a situation where people question the product. You just can't do that, as tempting as it may be. And for the Clases and the Ortiz, that's the tip of the iceberg. And trying to minimize it, say, well, it's just 2023 and 2025, certainly not 2024. Okay. But that gerbil. But the money started flowing in, and it's going to lead us to today's trivia question. Who was the first player to earn $3 million a season? Pretty straightforward. Let's see if you can remember who it was. The first person to sign a contract that would pay them $3 million a season. Put the answer down below. And again, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. And thank you for making us here at Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network. Answering your questions and talking about some of the influence that's sneaking into baseball. And as profitable as it may be, we got to be a little careful here because the key for making baseball so thrilling is thinking everyone is on the up and up. And you can't even afford a rumor of anything otherwise. This has been Locked On MLB. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.